The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions. How's it going?
Dude, it's been an entire week of nothing but cool, refreshing 7-Up. The Uncola.
You see, that explains to me the weird bloated look I'm seeing from you right now.
Yeah, so when I say nothing but, I mean no food, no water. Yeah, just strictly a 7-Up based diet.
Cool, refreshing 7-Up.
The Uncola.
God, what would that even do to you? Because it's a lot of sugar, so you wouldn't die, but it's also like, I mean, I don't know. That sounds unpleasant.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking the lie to people about the before and after photos for a weight loss drug is not a good diet. Like the things you do to make yourself look terrible and pretend that was how you looked before the magical supplement you're selling at 3 a.m. That diet is not a good diet.
It's not a winning diet. That's not what you want. What did we play?
We played Cool Spot, specifically for the Sega Genesis, or if you live in Europe or Australia, the Sega Genesis. Because I can never remember if it's the Mega Drive or the Master System. I think it's the Mega Drive was what they called it, but it's the Sega Genesis.
We're American.
Americans, yeah. So this game is exactly what it sounds like. It is a platformer starring the red circle off of a bottle of 7-Up.
Cool Spot. Yep.
Cool Spot. Came out in April of 93. It's a platformer, and it's kind of actually a collect-a-thon, because like you have to collect things to proceed, but there's more total things that are required to collect, which I will have lots to say about later. And the object of the game is the other spots have been kidnapped, and you are out to rescue them. So you collect spots, which allow you to unlock the cages that spots are in, and that's how you beat the level. And there's like 10 levels plus a bunch of bonus levels, and that's like literally it. That's like the entire game that they somehow made out of a soft drink mascot that I cannot stress enough is a red circle.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird when you start pumping the well and it's already dry. But then somebody's like, I still got to get water. And so you're like, alrighty, well, I've got this coffee filter and some wet mud. So I am just going to really press this mud through this coffee filter and give you some water. Yeah. Not that I've done that.
I hope you're as thirsty as you were claiming a minute ago. So in lieu of a nostalgia goggles experience, because I did actually play this game as a kid, because I remember renting it from Blockbuster. So I absolutely really did play this game. So I really can, claim it fits the bill. But I instead choose to tell this story. This is in the Wikipedia article that's linked in the show notes. But I'm going to read this one paragraph word for word. Remember, this game is starring a red circle that is the mascot for 7-Up in most of the world. But in the European release, the 7-Up bottle was removed from the intro and replaced by a generic soda bottle of a similar color. The decision was made to avoid associating the 7-Up spot with the 7-Up brand in a region where Fido Dido has been considered the brand's official mascot since the 1980s. So this game, which only exists because companies of all different types were desperately trying to be cool and relevant by making video games in the early 90s. There's an entire part of the world where they have no idea why there are like green soda bottles all over the place in this game, because they don't associate this little red circle with this brand of soda. So to them, this is just a video game.
That is wild. That would be like opening a daycare center that doesn't accept children.
Right. It's mind-boggling.
It's like that's what the whole point was. Like, the whole point of this was to get people to pay you to advertise to them. It's the same thing where, I mean, because advertisers have been working since the dawn of time to figure out how to get you to buy more things. and so, like the dream of an advertiser. Like I remember do you remember the credit card commercials for I think it was like American Express, but they had Seinfeld and Superman.
Oh yeah.
And like I remember because that was around the time when YouTube I think was like getting started or something. But I like no, I take that back. So YouTube wasn't a thing yet. So like you had to, but the internet was. So but you had to like go to Amex's website to find those videos. And I was like, this is their dream because this is entertaining enough that I want to show this to this person as entertainment. So I'm like, I am now advertising for them, So yeah, so to go through all of that effort and then have somebody be like, yeah, but let's just sever the link between those two. It's like, well then, why are any of us here? What are we doing?
Which tells you a lot about modern colonialism, right? Because America has colonized the world through popular culture. And so our soda brand video games are so popular that we were able to push them overseas, even where they had no idea why this little red circle was trying to save other red circles on a beach. Like that's, wow.
Yeah, no, that is impressive. So for my nostalgia experience, I'm also gonna kind of veer right a bit. I may have played this game. In fact, I think I did play this game, but it was so forgettable that I don't. I mean, if I played it, my nostalgia memory would be like I played it.
It's so forgettable that I forgot it. How forgettable was it?
That I forgot it. So instead, I would like to share something that we spoke about briefly on another episode, but these are evergreen episodes. And kind of what put this in my mind. So the reason why we played this was because the holidays were recently. I was traveling, so I was like, I need a game. We needed a game that would be relatively easily digestible, and also that nobody was going to get wildly offended if we weren't able to do a 15-hour deep dive on it, right? Because if you say to somebody like, oh yeah, Katamari, whatever is, it's a pretty straightforward game. I really didn't put too much effort into it. Like some people they'd stab you, So
that's how you start getting hate DMs.
Hey, any publicity is good publicity, except for that publicity. That's bad publicity. So basically, I suggested this one, and the reason why this was in my head is because what I suggested that we actually play was Chex Quest, right?
Yeah, we'll get there eventually, champ.
We will. But the thing that I got a huge kick out of with that was that I was like, oh, we should play Chex Quest because I did play a lot of Chex Quest as a kid, which is why I was absolutely flabbergasted that you had never heard of it, Like, I was like, oh, yeah, Chex Quest. And you're like, excuse me? And I was like, oh, yeah, it's like Doom, but with cereal. And you were like, you're having a stroke, right? Like, you're just saying words now. It's kind of like when you say to somebody, hey, I want to do Hamlet, but with lions in Africa, and people are like, okay. So I say all that to say, that the thing I found amazing about the Chex Quest thing was that the reason why we didn't play it was because we couldn't find a copy of the original. And why couldn't you find a copy of the original?
Because they made an HD remaster that is actually fairly well reviewed on Steam, and that's now the only version you can get.
Yes. So these weird commercials like have such a weird like aggressive fan base that they have warranted remakes and remasters that are well reviewed and popular. And it's like, I mean, I cannot imagine that the exec that made Chex Quest back in the cocaine-fueled early 90s, because I'm sure that
they were coming down from the 80s.
Well, I think it's a cereal brand, so I think that they're just 10 years behind, there was like the Wall Street people, but then eventually the cereal guys get in on it. But and so that guy was like, nah, this will stand the test of time. So
and turned out to kind of be right. And it's actually the insanity goes on, because when we were talking about like food tie-in games, we both off the top of our heads were able to think of more than one, which is already upsetting. And even more than one soft drinked one, because there's also it's like Pepsi Man.
Pepsi Man.
And I don't know if you remember this because I don't think either of us were big into the Xbox culture. And are you a Burger King guy?
I am.
Are you? Okay. See, I'm a McDonald's guy. It's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
No, my dad would take me to Burger King on Tuesdays and
yeah,
that's
I mean, it's it's whatever you grow up with.
Exactly. Yep.
But I guess it must have been the early 2000s, when the Xbox was new, Burger King did this whole promotional like troll thing where if you bought a certain meal, you could get an Xbox game, like a game made for the Xbox. And I don't remember what they were, how serious they were. I'm sure they were super trolly, basically Pepsi Man. But I say all that to say this. This is not that, right? This is a serious video game made by real companies that actually produce video games. And that fact dawned on me when my moderator in Twitch chat said, so this was like a joke tie-in game, right? Like you bought like a 6-pack of 7-Up and this was included. And I went, no, you had to pay money for this like any other video game. And she was just like, what? Right? Because her whole thinking was like, oh, haha, this is like Chex Quest that you get for free in a box of Chex, or like those ridiculous Burger King games that you got for free when you bought a meal at Burger King. And I was like, no, actually, this is like a regular game
that you would buy or rent, and you did. But yep. But the nice thing though is that if you are going to enjoy a refreshing 7-Up, it's best to do it with friends. And speaking of friends,
I like that we are stopping our podcast about an advertisement video game to advertise the podcast that people are already listening to. Like, this is several layers of advertisement deep.
Oh yeah, no, this is
an advertisement turducken.
We are inside the looking glass. Also, 7-Up, give us stuff.
I don't actually really like 7-Up that much. So
Barter
yeah, well,
Coke.
there you go.
Not the soft drink.
No. Yeah, so you're already here, you're already listening, but if you haven't subscribed, you should do that so that you always get new episodes. If you like what we're doing, the best way to support us is tell other people, leave reviews on Apple Podcasts. If you want to talk to us, you can come and find us on the Twitters and the Twitches. All these links are actually in the show notes now, so it's easy to find us. If you want to go kind of above and beyond, like I said, reviews and personal recommendations are always the best. If you're really crazy and you want to actually give us a little money to help us buy Burger King and 7-Up, I guess, since that's where all of our games will now come from, you can support us on Patreon. And if you do that, everybody at every level gets the after show, which is just more of us talking about food themed games. I'm going to say that's just all it is. If this is your first episode, this is what sarcasm sounds like. For everybody else, all the after show is just food themed video games. If you support us at a high enough level, we'll actually shout you out on the show as a special thanks. And so with that, we want to start with our 8-bit classics. Kevin,
a Coca-Cola polar bear.
John,
Pepsi Man.
Jason,
Willie the Hillbilly.
Gonna have to ask you about that one after.
Yep.
And Yarno.
A Frosty Dog.
And our 16-bit heroes, Michael.
Sprite Boy.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. And Jacob.
The Great Root Bear.
And our full 3D supporter, David.
A 0 Kelvin Spot. Because that's cool.
That is cool.
That's real cool.
That's, oh my God. So what was that Willie one back there?
Willie the Hillbilly. I will give you 3 guesses to guess which brand that's from.
Wait. No, Twinkie the Kid was the cowboy Twinkie.
Yep.
Willie the Hillbilly. Is this like moonshine? Like
No, all of these are soda brands.
Oh, these are all soft drinks.
All soft drinks.
Oh,
Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Willie the Hillbilly, which you're guessing, Frosty Dog, which is Dr. Pepper, Sprite Boy, which is Sprite, The Great Root Bear, which is for A&W Root Beer, and Cool Spot.
Okay, so I'm sure that this is not right, but I just really want it to be Dr. Pepper.
His alter ego, Willie the Hillbilly. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde situation.
Yeah, and then he puts on the suit and glasses to become Dr. Pepper.
No, it is Mountain Dew.
Oh man. See, that's practically rude, right? Because the kind of people who are like hardcore Mountain Dew people. Yeah, no, I see where this comes from.
Yep. Yeah, and I will send this to you, and you may want to put it in the doobly doo in the bottom, but I don't know if you can without like, but it's or just like a link to it because it's offensive.
Yeah. No, that's definitely going in. I'm gonna take a note right here.
Yep. I mean, it's not like the most offensive thing, but it's not flattering.
Hillbilly, good is good. So
yeah,
what are we doing? Visuals.
We played a video game, I think. I forget that sometimes. Yeah. So visuals. This game obviously had them. I'm going to start with this. Foreground background issues, man, is a tragic mess. It is Home Alone-sian in its attempt at this. It's bad.
So my experience is that's true, but only in the indoor levels. Like when you're outside on the beach, I didn't feel like I had any trouble telling the difference between the foreground because you're on the beach and then the background is the ocean and the sky.
So the issue with the beach and similar levels is they struggle with like the Earthworm Jim problem, right? Where it's the way that they have colored it is it's difficult to tell exactly where you're going to be walking, right? You know, so like you walk kind of, it's kind of like in Bart Simpson's Nightmare where it's was it like an isometric view, you know?
Yeah, sometimes you're standing right on top of the platform like in Mario, and then other times you can see where the feet meet the ground. Yeah,
and there's some stuff behind you. Yeah. And so I hated that, especially in the beach level, because there are things in the ground that come out and like snipe at you, right? The crabs, right? So that was a problem because I would be like, oh, well, I can take 2 more steps before this crab can get to me. Oh, no, wait, there's a small dip, effectively invisible dip in the ground because of just the art style. And so that put me closer to the crab than I had anticipated, and then I got snagged. So, but to be fair, that was the beach level. So I was like, maybe it gets better. It's way worse. Yeah. So like,
it's way worse because later the ground is consistently flat most of the time, but then you just can't always tell what's in the background because everything is so busy.
Yes. No, I mean, these levels, they're so... And again, like, it's weird to say this about because you would think that for a soda tie-in game, that they would be really trying to keep production costs to a minimum, right? So I feel that we would be closer to not enough things, and they created a lot of art assets for this weird game, you know? So I don't know why they put so much work into it and then decided to go full... Star Wars Episode 2 with the lightsabers and make it into a rave party, you know, like.
Yeah. So my main issue with it was, even if you can tell the difference between the foreground and the background, which mostly it's because pretty much everything in the foreground is moving, but in the later levels, there's too many enemies. Right. And so
way too many
enemies. Some of them fire projectiles. There's a lot of enemies that fly or at least like come down from the top of the screen. So there's just crap flying on and off the screen, popping up out of the ground, dropping from the top, flying in from left and right, like running in from left and right. There's environmental hazards that are like traps basically that you run into in some of the levels where you're like in the walls, I guess. And it's just too much. So it's like I don't even need to worry about what's in the background in some of these stages because I can't see it. There's so much stuff in the foreground I can't see the background.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, there's just it, and so then to your point, right? So we can just rapid fire these back and forth. So to your point, right? There's way too many enemies, and there is no visual indicator really for whether or not you're dealing damage to enemies, right? So like you're sitting there and you're firing like water sprite bubbles, right? You know,
sprite bubbles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. You're shooting carbonation, right? You know?
Not 7-Up bubbles, Sprite bubbles.
Ah, shit. Well, now we're not going to get any free stuff from 7-Up. Sprite,
No.
give us free stuff.
I'm also, I'm just letting you know right now, I'm not going to bleep that swear. Like that was so fun that I want everyone to get to enjoy that. So that's just staying right in there.
Wee. Yeah. So as you're firing your Dr. Pepper bubbles, yeah. So you're dealing damage to these bad guys, right? But the thing is that I couldn't easily tell, one, that I couldn't see a visual indicator for the fact that I was hitting them. The only thing I could tell was that, like when the bubbles kind of burst at the side, but there's so much stuff in the foreground and there's so many enemies everywhere that I couldn't really track that. They don't have any stagger animations. I don't think they stagger.
They don't. There's no, you can't interrupt their attacks. They don't get knocked back. Nope.
Right. Yep. So all you do, I mean, literally the first couple of times with the crabs, I wasn't sure I was doing it right until I just sat there and hammered on them, and then they fell off. And this is a great example of when it's like you notice the notes that aren't played, right? Because this is where good game design would come in, right? Because what you would do is put at the beginning some throwaway enemies that take one shot to kill, and then hit them with your sprite bubble, and then they off the screen. You're like, okay, this is how I damage enemies. Instead, they started right off with 4 and 5 hit enemies, and so
they just
I was honestly
poof out. Like, I mean, they die, and you know that they're dead because they don't come back, but it's not dramatic.
No, it's not. It's barely noticeable. And so then you kind of like wait for a minute. Like, did I do it? So yeah. So the fact that there are so many enemies, and you're not really sure if you're doing damage, and they don't have a stagger animation, and it's like it makes the combat mechanics a mess. But we can get into that more in mechanics. But yeah, no hit animation for you or for them.
Yeah, and I mean, at least it's the hero also doesn't have cartoonish knockback where you go flying, because you get hit constantly because there's so much crap going on. So it's like, that's kind of, I guess, whatever.
I mean, and you know what that sounds like? That sounds like the solution to that problem. Like, I would be willing to bet you that originally there was knockback, and then they threw so much garbage in there that they were like, you can't the game is literally unplayable. You walk in, you get ping-ponged around to death. So let's just get rid of the knockback animation, and then let's put less stuff on the screen.
I feel like knockback, when a player suffers knockback, that usually means the game is harder, right? Like, even in a well-designed game, you think of like the original Mega Man, right? Pretty, not the hardest game ever made, but it ain't easy, right? And like, when you get hit, there's like a dramatic, you flash, you make the face, and like it pushes you back. You don't get knocked way back, but I mean, you could fall off a ledge, get knocked back, right? Especially if you get clipped out of the air. So like, I should say, I have started to associate knockback mostly with like, oh, this is not a game for kiddie babies, right? This is a grown-up game.
It's a man's game.
Yeah. Right. So in a game like this, it's just like, oh, well, it's a dumb, games are for dumb kids, and it's harder if there's knockback. So there's no knockback.
Well, so this is definitely a mechanics though, but I would say that for knockback, to me is part of it's an execution and severity, right? So if you've got severe knockback, like super ghouls and ghosts knockback, like that, that's intense, right? Because it will regularly knock you into pits, where all of a sudden to be fair, in that game, you only had 2 hit points ever, but now you've got none. So I think that's its own issue. But I will say that for Mega Man, here's the advantage, I think, for knockback, right? And the thing to be said for it is it actually gives your brain more time to process what's going on, because what happens is you get knocked back a small amount, right? And then, again, you have to rely on level and enemy placement design to make sure that if you want to make it really hard, then place those things so that way knockback knocks you off the cliff. And then I absolutely agree with you that those are for people with, hair on their back. Men, women, doesn't matter. You've got to have hair on your back.
You gotta have it.
Yeah. But is that most of the time Mega Man didn't do that. And so what the knockback actually did was you would get knocked back, right? And you'd be invincible, but it would knock you back like a couple spaces and more specifically knock you out of the enemy that you just got hit by. And then you got to be invincible for another couple of seconds and then do a thing. So you actually had like, I don't know, 2 seconds to like figure out what to do next. The issue with this one, and this is 100% mechanics note, but I'm going to go ahead and dump on it now, is that in this one, because there isn't knockback, enemies can just hammer on you, because there's nothing moving you out of their hitbox, so like there were a couple of times I was like, all righty, I'm just going to walk into this area. And I walked out on death's door from one enemy because I just kept like its walk animation was right in line. I was doing like the in the hallway thing, where like I kept trying to get out of his hitbox, but he kept moving where I was moving. I just kept taking damage, Well,
and to tie that back into visuals nicely, the term for that is iframes, right? Invincibility frames. So if you don't have some kind of obvious visual that you've been hit, I think you need way more iframes, right? Because then otherwise you're taking damage and you may not know it because it's not interrupting the controls. There's no visual interruption. I don't even know if there's a clear sound trigger when that happens. So like it's missing on all cylinders, right? So you can walk into an enemy, you get hit, you're invincible for half a second, right? Where he does the stereotypical flash like in every video game, right? But then before you can even be like, oh, hey, was he just flashing? Like you get hit again and then again and then again, and then you're dead. And so the whole like mechanically, I think there is a lot of sadness in the choices they made. But if visually they just flashed you, if you flash, because you're red. So if you flashed like red and green and it was like screaming obvious, like you are being hurt, cool spot, run for the hills, then okay, maybe, whatever. But it's not visually clear, and it's only mechanically clear when you die. Like, oh, that was hurting me.
Well, and also too, to jump off of that, right? Your UI, while super cool, is not super helpful, right? So I really like the concept of like, oh, well, it's your picture of cool spot, and then he like slowly gets hurt, and then like falls, and then like he falls off.
It's like Doom Guy. It's like
it's like Doom Guy.
I love it.
Yeah. But also like, he kind of like slides off like cool spot. But the problem with that is that it's not a great indicator for how many hit points you have left, because Doom Guy also had health. Like that was an accent. That was the chocolate mousse at the end to finish off a meal. And maybe you wanted more, but what you had was delicious, this is not that. This is the whole meal is the chocolate mousse, and that's an issue, because when you pair that with the fact that I would again walk into an area, take some damage, and then be like, oh well, did I take damage? Maybe not, because the first, let's say you have 10 hit points, right? The first 5 of them, Cool Spot just looks more upset, right? And
yeah,
he's pretty cool. So it's kind of hard to tell when he's looking upset. Then the last 5 is him completely peeling off the thing, right? So I'd walk into an area, walk out, and be like, oh, I guess I thought I was getting wrecked, but I guess not. And then because he'd only have like the little flappy doodle at the top, like coming down. And then I'd get hit 2 or 3 more times. I'm like, oh, I'm dead. Oh. Oh. So yeah, I mean,
if it was a health bar, right? The first 8 hits would be like tiny little pips off the end, and then a giant like chunk dead.
But that's the thing, is that like, to your point, right, is that like not only do you need more iframes, but you need more, if they had an actual health bar at the top or something like that, you could actually animate that better, right? So even if they wanted to keep with this Cool Spot thing, if Cool Spot actually had a little word bubble that said ouch every time you got hit, it's just something to say like, you're taking damage, Fox, and like the screen shakes or something. But they didn't do that. And I think it's mostly because when you start taking damage, you take a lot of damage real fast.
Yeah. And okay, here's what I want to focus on, so we don't go too hard into mechanics right now. Cool Spot is cool. Like,
he is real cool.
This is where a lot of the budget for this game was into like literally
animation.
Yeah, right. he hater walks, right? Like he
Oh, yes,
he
he
haters
does.
gonna hate walk, which I think is fantastic. He has like 6 idle animations. Like he yawns like he's bored, like he does the too cool for school Sonic thing, but he also like does a little dance. He's got a yo-yo that he plays with.
Yep.
Right? And I was just like, oh, this is all the stuff in my memory that was telling adult me, you should play this on the Genesis. Don't do the Super Nintendo one. Don't do the Game Boy one. I swear to God, there's also an MS-DOS version of this. Don't do the MS-DOS version, right? You need the Genesis one because this is a cool character who's 90s cool. And what was the cool 90s console? It was the Sega Genesis, right?
It was.
So
Because Genesis does what Nintendo doesn't.
That was exactly how they said it right before all the commercials for Sprite.
I was hoping to break you. Like it's just, whoa. But I didn't. I'll keep trying.
Yeah, you'll get there, champ.
I'll keep Dr. Peppering these around and see how they go.
See, you got right back on that horse.
I did. It's cycle time.
But I do. I mean, this is not sarcasm. Like I legitimately appreciate that the good people at 7-Up contacted Virgin Interactive and said, we need Sonic the Hedgehog, but with our circle logo, please. And that is essentially what they did, right? Because Cool Spot was already a mascot, like he already existed. Sorry, they already existed. And it's just, I can't believe they even bothered to put this on Super Nintendo and Game Boy. Like this just screams Sega Genesis. Like this, this is such a Sega Genesis game. And I looked at some screen because we played the Genesis version, but I looked up some screenshots and it looks basically the same on the Super Nintendo, and obviously it's monochrome on the Game Boy, but it's just like, nah, this is a Sega Genesis game that was ported to the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, absolutely. I also thought it was, to your point, right, is that Cool Spot is, literally one of my notes is cool animations for Cool Spot.
I have Cool Spot is cool.
Cool Spot is cool. He does what it says on the can. But I thought it was neat that, because Cool Spot is an actual, like, they are the spot, right, on the thing. So they scale you. So you're like, when you're on the beach, you're like, they give you a giant chair and you're fighting crabs and like small things, so it's not like Cool Spot came to life and is now human sized.
He's 6 feet tall.
Yeah, like this is definitely like an Ant-Man thing where you see him like fighting the crab and you just see the little like bink on the beach. So I thought that was kind of cool. One other thing is that I want to make sure that I mention is there's no visual indicator for on the levels that are highly vertical. Specifically, this is on the second level, where if you're going to fall down a pit and die, or just go lower on the screen, there's no way to tell. And I know that because I fell down a pit and died thinking I could go further down. Yeah,
because a lot of levels have verticality.
They do, like intense verticality. And so I'm like, that's just sloppy. That's irritating, because, and especially, because, I mean, even Celeste that, does that type of thing all the time, they pretty much make it very clear when they're like, hey, you need to go down here because they shine light, and every other time they pretty much don't break that. Even if they do, the cycle time's super short. But this one, you've got lives and stuff, and we can get into that mechanics. But yeah, so I was like, this is sloppy. It's just sloppy. There's just no reason for it. If you got a high level of verticality and you don't like clearly say where to go, then just have a floor. Just have a floor to the level. Cover it in spikes if you must, that instantly kill you. That will do the same thing, but you won't accidentally jump on them.
Yeah, you won't throw yourself onto the spikes thinking maybe that the truth is down there.
So this is a slight tangent, but because I don't think you never played Borderlands 2, right? You only played 1.5 and
correct.
3. Yeah.
And I actually, there's like a new-ish one. It's like Tiny Tina something.
Yeah.
And I have that because it was free on the Epic Store. So I have
nice.
that in my backlog.
Excellent. So all of this is true. But basically in Borderlands 2, there's the villain, Handsome Jack, who is amazing. And he basically at one point, a mission that you get from him, which is the only mission you get from him in the game, is I will pay you to kill yourself. Because you've got the new U stations, right? And so basically you get up to a cliff, and the choice is to either like do a thing or jump off the cliff. And if you do the thing, then you get like $500 or something like that, which is not much money. Or if you jump off the cliff, you get like 20 iridium, which is an unconscionable amount of money, right? And so, like, but the funny thing that I think of every time is that as you're walking up the cliff, there's another like bandit running away from you full tilt towards the cliff, and he goes, "I'm gonna be rich!" Just like, and so whenever I think of jumping off a cliff or like hurling yourself onto the spikes, I just think I'm gonna be rich. So,
no, that's fair. and this is the opposite of that, right? Because Cool Spot, Cool Spot doesn't give us money. We give Cool Spot money.
We do. So maybe as he like dies for the 5th time and we're like, God, I'm going to have to rent this game again in order to beat that. He's like, I'm going to be rich.
The only other thing I wanted to say about the visuals, just because I've noted, you do your notes in the same format every time. So like you start to notice some patterns in your own behaviors. And I started to write out the note about like that the level design was fairly varied, right? Yeah. And then I played through the whole game, and it's not. It's and it's not in like a way that I found very annoying, because we didn't have the manual handy for this game. I don't know if the manual tells you much. Maybe it's just a bunch of coupons for 7-Up. Who knows? But the story of this game is essentially the other spots were kidnapped and you were saving them, right? And so the fact that it takes place like on a beach where there's like bottles of 7-Up and cool people being hip and young and fun is like, yeah, totally. I get it, right? Like cool spots, cool. And where do cool people go in the 90s in soda commercials? The beach. Like, fine. Yep. Like no further questions. And then there's one where you're like on a pier and there's like a ship in the background, but then you're like in the walls of, I guess, a toy store, because then in the next one you're in like a toy store, but there's like these crazy just crap flying everywhere. And I was like, okay. So like half this game takes place on like a cool, fun beach where like young people go to drink 7-Up and surf. And half of it takes place in like Sid's bedroom from Toy Story. Like, what is the point of those levels? Like, why did I have all the beachy stuff and all the like beach theme stuff? Because there's like surfboards and crap and like kites in the background, which is very beachy, right? But then like dolls and rats and mouse traps and crap. And I was like, what? Did they just have these art assets laying around, and so they just shoved them in here so they didn't have to draw more enemies? And then like at the end you're like back on the beach and then the game's over. You're just like, what happened? So normally I praise the variety in a game like this, where it's like, oh yeah, they didn't have to, kind of like what you said, like, oh, they didn't have to have all that variety. But no, they don't have good variety. They have a little bit, and what's there feels confusing and disarming. Like, it's not good.
Yeah, no, I can definitely concur with that. The one other note that I had for visuals, and so this is interesting because I went back and listened to some of our older podcasts, which is always an interesting journey, because I feel that we've been doing this for a while, and I think we've gotten better at it. And the sheer number of times I used to say like on the podcast is a little grating on me now. So I apologize for anyone who goes back and listens to some of the older episodes.
Isn't that the one haunting thing about these being evergreen episodes? Right.
Yeah.
Because when a new person comes to the show and it's like, oh, I like how these two dudes think, I'm going to go check out some of these other games. And it's like, okay, but remember, the episodes are evergreen. We're not. We still experience time linearly.
Exactly. So be careful. But anyways, I went back and listened to Echo the Dolphin, and you taught me a term then that I had forgotten, but I have relearned, and I'm glad that I have, because I want to make sure that I'm using it properly here. I hope you like dithering, because right? Did I do that right?
Yeah, you did. You did. This game has a lot of dithering.
It's everything, man. I mean, like, oh my good giddy God, like, just, it's like, oh man, there's this tool that when you press it, it makes everything fade. And it's like, do we need to use it on everything? It's just everywhere. And I hate that art style, man. It looks like sandpaper to me. Yeah. It just,
dithering is there are two kinds of people who notice dithering. People who are like, oh my God, this looks really grainy, and like professional artists, right? Because dithering is just like, it's like any special effect. It's like any CGI in a movie, right? Like in I was just talking to somebody about this, like in Jurassic Park, when Jurassic Park was new, do you remember how many people are like, oh yes, everything's just going to be CGI from now on? And it's like, do you have any idea how many of those effects were practical? Most of the movie was practical effects, right? Like they used CGI where they had to, or where it was the right tool for the job. But a ton of the dinosaurs are just big plastic toys. They're big rubber suits and stuff. And dithering is that. If you notice the dithering, there's too much dithering. It's
too much.
It's not that it's always bad. It's that the second you notice it, now it's just everything looks like it's covered in sandpaper.
Yep. No, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I mean, that's true of any tool, right? Any material, right? You know, I mean, it's like if you're making a cake, you probably need sugar. If you can taste the sugar, like if you take a bite out of that cake and it's crunchy with sugar, that is too much sugar, right? Yeah, it's awful, you know. So this is the I can literally taste the texture of the sugar in the cake. It's bad. Dithering isn't bad. This dithering is.
There's too much dithering in this cake.
Yeah, that. But that's all I got for visuals.
Okay, so for the audio, I'm going to tell you some feelings I have, and then I'm going to share a piece of independent third-party evidence for my feelings. The music in this game is better than this game deserves. Like, it's way, way better than this game deserves. It's actually pretty... There's a couple songs in the weird Toy Story levels that I really didn't care for, but the vast majority of this music is not just like, oh wow, it's better than I expected. It's good. And because when we record episodes, I always have like a bunch of screenshots and stuff queued up as like to kind of go along with my notes. One of these screenshots, the title for what I assume is either an article or a video, is "Cool Spot shockingly has some of the best music on the Genesis." And I was like, well, here's some strange internet weirdo that is not me, but who absolutely agrees with my point of view. And that's validating. But I don't know why this music is so good, but like the like title screen song is like a 8-bit cover of Wipeout. And it's not like a crappy MIDI ringtone for your Nokia candy bar phone. Like it is a legit chiptune cover of the song Wipeout. And I was like, who put in all this effort, and why did they do it, and how do I thank them?
So I will agree with that. The music, and the way I know that the music is at least halfway decent, I will say that the beach theme, I did not like that one.
But just to be fair, is it you didn't like it, or it's a bad piece of music?
I don't know if I have the musical chops to distinguish those two things.
Do it. Shoot from the hip.
Yeah. No, it's bad, and anybody who likes it is either a drug addict or a murderer, and that is a complete list. That's a comprehensive list.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's how an American takes a stand.
that is good, solid review right there. Impartial, calm, collected.
Stay scientific, George.
Anyways, so the music, one of the reasons why I can attest to the music being good is that Megan said at least 3 different times, this sounds like you're playing Sonic. And I'm like, well, that's high praise because Sonic has good music, you know? So yeah, it sounds, and that holds up because it's on the Genesis, but yeah, it sounds like you're playing Sonic.
The Genesis has such a specific sound palette available to it compared to the Super Nintendo. So this is yet another reason that I'm like, oh, this game belongs on the Genesis. Because if the Super Nintendo version has these same tune skis, but in the Super Nintendo sound palette, they wouldn't be as cool. And I mean that in the cool spot sense of the word. Like, they would not be as 90s solid black sunglasses, big white gloves cool, right? Like, the Genesis had Sonic, and Sonic songs had a very particular grungy Sega Genesis sound to them, which is, it's 90s cool, right? So like, I don't know if I would go quite so far as to say like, oh, this sounds like Sonic, but she's not wrong, right? Like,
she's not. Yeah,
it's like a cover band. It's like, oh, this isn't the Beatles, but they're obviously playing Beatles music.
Yeah, actually, when I think Sega Genesis, I think obviously Cool Spot, but yeah, Sonic, what was Earthworm Jim, right? And Toe Jam and Earl, Panic on Funky Funk, which you never played,
dude. I have, but I played the vastly superior Toe Jam and Earl, which again has phenomenal like all of those games, particularly Cool Spot, the preeminent Sega Genesis game.
Yes,
but all of those games have excellent music that just wouldn't sound the same coming out of a Super Nintendo. They'd still probably sound good, but they wouldn't sound the same.
But here's the thing about the music is that no matter how good the music is, it will have trouble ringing through the din of all of the sound effects that are going on all at the same time. There is sound effects for everything, sound effects all the time. And we talked about dithering being the sugar in this is the sugar in the cake, like of the audio, right? I mean, it's hard to it's fine when Cool Spot is hater walking from point A to point B in the brief time when there are no enemies. But when you shoot your soda bottle, it makes a noise. When it hits things, it makes a noise. When you jump, it makes a noise. Fortunately, when you walk, it doesn't make a noise. Because I know you hate that.
That would have been close.
Yeah, but outside of that, every single other action that you have makes a noise, and so it makes me think of The Incredibles, where it's like everyone's special, Dash. That's just a nice way to say that no one is, right? So if all of the sound effects are important, right, and they're supposed to be drawing your attention, they can't all be important, right? I don't need this many sound effects all hammering at the exact same time,
Well, to do a variety of sound, right? If there was like every enemy when they get hit, they make a enemy got hit sound effect, right? Then okay, but then you can't have 100 enemies on the screen because now I'll be hearing that a lot, right? If every time an enemy gets hit, they make a different noise depending on the kind of enemy they are, then I hope you are doing some like volume scaling, because otherwise you just have this like cacophonous, right? It'd be like setting a zoo on fire and like all the animals are just screaming and you hear the roar of the fire and it's like, I can't tell which animals I need to go save first. I don't know why I went to that analogy, but I'm just gonna have to pretend that was a normal thing to say. But there's just the same kinds of sounds, like the same like 4 or 5 sounds just happening constantly.
Yeah, and so that of course, trying to stay scientific, Jerry. I try to look for, okay, well this bugged the ever loving hell out of me. Am I, being consistent? And I am always perfectly. But so here's the thing: is like let's take two counterexamples, right? Let's look at Sonic, and then let's look at Contra. I promise this will bear fruit.
Yeah, no, I'm excited.
So if you look at Sonic, right, you make a jump noise, right, and enemies also make noises when you hit them and all that kind of stuff. But those two things are the same thing. When you that's the only way to damage enemies is to jump and hit them, and jumping has hang time to it, right? So you jump and then you hit the thing, and you can't hit 5 different enemies at once. You can't rapid fire, right? That's not the way Cool Spot interacts with stuff, right? He's constantly firing, so that's making that noise all of the time, right? And that means that you can be hitting things way faster, right? So there's no way for Sonic to hit as many enemies as quickly as Cool Spot is, which means you're not going to hear the sound as much. So let's take another example, Contra, where you absolutely can do exactly what Cool Spot does and then some. Why isn't that as obnoxious? And I would posit that the reason why that's obnoxious is because it's intentional, because it's supposed to be the Ares of war, right? It's supposed to be like you're on a battlefield firing constantly. You're supposed to be having all of these noises hitting you all of the time. And the music is like, dun, 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 dun. It's like this like hard metal, fast-paced music, right? This is not that, because Cool Spot's cool, right? And cool people don't care, They, like he's above all that, right? He's got his like strut and hater walk, and all that sort of stuff. So the sound palette should be tempo-wise closer to Sonic than to Contra, because the aesthetic of the game is closer to Sonic than it is to Contra.
Well, I think I don't want to go off into mechanics too early, but the
it's okay. I mean, I just know that this is a really good episode, and it's been a while. It happens to everyone.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just go into mechanics too soon.
Sometimes I'm tired. It's been a long weekend.
I had some champagne.
There's a lot of sugar in this cake. But But I always, like, now as an adult with a an adult's view on the world, I always struggle with games that are like, what if gun violence? I'm like, what if not gun violence, right? Like, why does Cool Spot shoot things? Like, you have the two most popular platforming games ever made, Sonic and Mario. You jump on stuff, right?
Yeah. And you crush their skulls under your iron boot.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone is fine with it. And
yeah, peaceful.
Cool Spot's got his big, honking, Nike Air Jordans on or whatever they're supposed to be. And just let me stomp with those, right? Like, and I also feel like that's more kid friendly, right? Because what do you do when you get hit by an enemy? Like, you panic and you try to get away. So if I jump and then I come down on top of an enemy, now that enemy is dead, right? Whereas I don't know if you experimented with this a lot, but you can actually shoot in 8 directions, right? Mm-hmm. So up, down, left, right, and you can do the diagonals, but it also makes you walk left or right when you're holding
in Contra. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, right? So what young kid playing this $45 soda commercial is going to get hit and then jump backwards and jump with their back to the enemy and be pointing their Cool Spot fingers down, firing Dr. Pepper at their opponent, right? Like, nobody. So
yeah,
I would way rather all of those sound effects get consolidated into the jump noise and the boop noise that enemies make when you jump on their heads in most video games, right? Like, this is something that has just always blown my mind. And it's visually, it's weird for a little friendly mascot character to be firing a gun. It's, it creates the overwhelming oral impact that is unpleasant and is actually relevant to the section of the podcast we're in. And mechanically, I just think it's a poor choice. So it might as well be making a machine gun noise. Like, it's that out of place.
Well, and I think that to your point, I don't think that people really put this type of thought, not this amount of thought, but this type of thought into it, But I mean, I think that honestly, to your point, is even stomping on enemies is cooler than shooting them. Shooting them smacks of effort, like it does, So like as opposed to literally hey, I was just jumping around and then I happened to dispatch you as I was going from point A to point B. I used you as a platform to get from point A to point B because I don't care, man. You can't even touch me. Versus oh no, I'm going to sit here and look at you, focus on you, take aim on you and shoot. That means that you care about them, and caring about stuff that's for squares, not circles like Cool Spot. So oh wow, sorry. I just noticed that I have a clear visual note in audio. Just must have plugged in the wrong place, which was, are all bonus levels the outside of 7-Up? Open parentheses, yes. Close parentheses.
Good.
Anyways.
Glad that got in there.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that's kind of all I have for audio.
Yeah, my last audio note is, and I don't mean this nearly as insulting as it's going to come across, just a little bit insulting. The soundtrack is no question the best part of this game.
Right. Yeah, no, I can agree with that. Controls and mechanics?
Controls and mechanics. I was so shocked and delighted that this game is a collectathon. And here's...
You do like those.
Well, I do, and I've also realized, thanks to Banjo-Kazooie, which we also played, and you can go back and listen to that episode, is to me, and I think that this is the correct definition, and I would love to hear someone explain to me why this is not true. To me, a collectathon means there has to be a fairly large gap between the number of things to collect and the number of things you must collect, right? Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, you're just getting keys. If there's 5 doors and you need a key for each door, and the level has 5 keys in it, that's not a collectathon. If there's 1,000 doors and the level has 1,000 keys, it's also not a collectathon because you have to get them all to proceed. To me, it's all about the gap between what is required and what is possible, right? The newer, like, Rayman Legends does this phenomenally well. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze does this. Super Mario Odyssey is probably the best right now at, like, here's what you need to finish the game and here's what's possible, right? Just massive. And this game actually does this in a surprisingly clever way for the time and history this was. So every map has some amount of spots on it that you have to collect to free the cool spot that's in a cage that you're trying to rescue. If you're playing on easy, you only have to get 30% of the spots that are on that map. If you're playing on normal, it's 60%, and I assume hard is like 80 or 90%. I didn't bother to play this game on hard because I don't care. But the fact that they said, okay, even on normal, the difficulty we are designing the gaming experience around, there's still almost 2x the total available things to collect before you are allowed to say, okay, I finished this level. Like that, I was like, how is this a better collectathon than Banjo-Kazooie? I mean, it's a worse game in every other way, but in terms of just like, I want to play a game where I get to explore a, vaguely non-linear space, collect things, and then that allows me to proceed when I decide I'm done collecting things. Like, great, like, excellent work. Weirdly, surprisingly good job, guys.
Agreed. I'm not as big of a fan of the collectathon if the results from the collectathon are ill-defined, right? So for example, right, like you have to collect certain things to free the spot, right? But if you collect them all, or 90% or 80%, then what?
I think that's how you get like the bonus levels and continues and stuff.
Yeah, which to me is so I get to do a bonus level where I get to collect more things. So, but anyway, but to your point, right, is that like in some games, like you can collect more stuff, and it's like but if you collect other things, you get this cool motorbike, or you get more whatever, more in-game content. I think though that, to me, one of the best exemplars of a collectathon is Celeste, because it's completely optional, right? There are different types of currencies to collect that do different things. So you can collect the hearts, which will unlock like this like super special extra hard level, right? You can collect the B-sides, right? But the cool thing is that you can collect the strawberries. And what do the strawberries do? They just change the ending, that little ending cutscene, But it's very clear. So it's like, hey, collect these things if you want. So, but to your point, right, is that it is a collectathon. So I ask you this: why is it timed? Why is this game timed?
Yeah.
Why?
No. So this is where they fall right back off the wagon.
Yep.
Because I think a collectathon is a kind of game. It's a tool that plays on humans' desire to just collect stuff. Right. And
yes, there are. Yeah. If there's like half a dozen different things that I can think of off the top of my head that, like, where there's like amiibos or whatever. Yeah. Those exist in this world. Human beings like collecting things.
Pogs.
Stamps. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah. Pogs.
Pogs are modeled after old-fashioned milk caps. Like, stamps at least serve a function and are pretty to look at. So
that is true. But I would actually say that to me, stamp collecting is awful. I mean, it's awful in general. I'll stand by that statement. But it's awful in the sense that, like, you are specifically perverting their purpose, right?
Yes.
Like
now you'll never do what your main function is.
Yeah, right. Like the whole point of them is that you put them on a thing and then send it away from you forever. So like you're doing the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. But the reason I say that is, like, I like collecting things in video games because I like collecting things, right? Like that is just a thing that is fun to me to do. And it needs some framing device around it, right? Like in Super Mario Odyssey, I wouldn't just walk down a hall. This is like is it New Super Mario Brothers 2, where it's just like, what if everything was coins, right? One of the newer 2D Mario games is just like a coin orgy. Like there's power-ups that make coins. There's rooms that just literally the entire room is filled with coins, so it's impossible to move without picking up coins. Coins just rain down from the sky, and like, to me, that's not fun, right? That's fun maybe to like a small child who's just like, oh my god, so many coins. But like in Super Mario Odyssey, collecting moons is representative of your ability to collect moons. You have 700 moons and I have 800 moons because there's 100 you couldn't get, but I could, right? And that's like, that just, it's irrefutable proof. It's the strawberries in Celeste, right? It's irrefutable proof that you completed this super hard challenge and someone else didn't, right? So like, I do need that bit of framing device. Here, the only framing device is time pressure. It's just, can you collect them all before the clock runs out? And as much as I love collecting stuff, I don't love collecting stuff with a gun to my head. So like
That's
that,
fair.
that to me is the worst way I have personally seen to do a collectathon, is like, oh, hey, the levels are like kind of nonlinear and you can sort of approach them in like multiple directions and take multiple paths and stuff. And that's neat. And there's spots spread throughout. So if like there's a bunch of enemies near these spots and you can ignore those because you don't want to deal with the enemies and just go over here and collect some, and then you'll still be able to finish the level. It's great. It's like, oh, but you got to do it real quick, otherwise we're going to kill this spot. It's like, no, sorry.
Wait, nope,
because
that's fun.
Being afraid you're going to murder me if I don't do this thing in the amount of time you laid out for me, it's not cool.
It's not cool. And on top of that, you know what cool people do? They walk away from stuff like that, you know, because they're too cool for it.
Yeah.
I will say that here is something that they did that I know other games do this, but I struggled off the top of my head to think of one that we've played recently that does this, which is, I'm sure there is it, but is that this is a 2D side scroller, and enemies don't respawn between lives. And that's weird, you know? So like if you dispatch an enemy, right, and then you die, that enemy's gone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and since we have more than once talked about Nintendo games that are like, what if enemies just magically respawn infinitely forever?
Yeah.
That feels like a very intentional choice.
Right. And so here's my guess on, so initially I was like, that's a bit odd. Either A, like just give me 5 lives worth of health, right? And then it's one, and then it's one run, right? You know, like Gungeon or something like that. Or, you know, do it normal. Here's my guess is that because there's no knockback, right? So what people could do, right, is just scream through the level, right? Is just ignore getting hit, because as long as you don't take all of your hit points of damage, right, you won't die, right? And then just kind of ignore enemies and just grab all the stuff and just ransack the place and get out, right? So what this one actually does is it kind of puts you on more of a, you know what, I am going to actually interact with and kill these enemies, because then I will never have to deal with them again. And so there were a couple of times where I started to get frustrated. I was like, I'm just going to run through all of this. And then I died, and I was like, well, that life was basically meaningless because I didn't kill any enemies on that run, you know? So I just lost a life. Whereas even if I got, you know, a third of the way through it and I died, I was like, well, I'm now going to get way further because I was dispatching all of the enemies as I went, and therefore I can now get farther, you know? So it's a weird kind of like a checkpoint almost. So kind of weird, kind of different.
Yeah. And I'm actually not sure your assessment was correct. I can't think of an old video game that did that. Like,
yeah,
that's such I can think of some modern games that do that, but I can't think of like an 80s, 90s era game that was like, oh yeah, you know, once they're dead, they're dead, because like that's a thing you have to remember, right? Like,
right. It has to store that in memory.
Yeah. Someone had to write code that's like, okay, this many enemies have been dispatched, which also means like when the level reloads, it's not reloading. Like you are reloading at the spawn point, but the whole world of the level you're currently in is not resetting, right? Which is
right.
Like in the original Mario Brothers, for example, like every enemy is in exactly the same place every single time you start the level because they come into existence when the level comes into existence, right? If you stomp one Goomba and then you die, that Goomba is right back where they were.
Yeah, sometimes if you leave the frame, sometimes if you barely leave the frame, it'll come back.
Sometimes if you stand still, they just spawn infinitely because you are standing on their spawn point.
Yeah, so yeah, I just thought I was just kind of like that's weird. One thing that we discussed this outside of the game, but I kind of wanted to do it on the air because I got a kick out of it, right? Which was there is a level select cheat for this game. It automatically forces invincibility upon you, right?
Yeah, it does.
Which is kind of
no way to turn it off.
Yeah, no way. Right. So, I remember you saying like, oh, well, it's because it was for developers, right? So that way they could stress test their levels. I'm like, nah, I much more would rather think of like you want to pick a level? Do you, little piggy? Huh? You want to pick a level, pig? Well, then take invincibility too, piglet. And they just, so that way that you cheated, and like that's very reminiscent of time and very reminiscent of like cool games. So it's kind of on brand.
Well, and I think, yeah, there definitely are video games that are like the minute you enter a cheat code, they're like, we're never going to let you live this down. But for me, like one of the most delightful things about playing this game was the cheat code is like 25 button presses, right? It's like, you pause the game and then it's like C A B C C C A B B A C B A, right? Like it's all over the damn place. And I love that. I love it. I love it so much. Like it's like playing a recorder. Like it's a little simple instrument. And I delighted in it every time I did it. And then it played the little chime and it tosses you to the next level. What I think is problematic in this implementation is most cheat codes in old video games are there for the developers, right? That's why most video games have like debug mode, because it's literally for debugging the game, right? It's literally a tool the developers use and they just leave in because they know people think it's fun to screw around with. This game doesn't have any normal level select. So like even after you beat the game, there's no way to say like, okay, now I want to play level 3. And there's no saves or anything, which is fine. I get it. A lot of games don't have saves because it's a big pain in the ass to code for, but okay, can you please not couple level select with invincibility? Because now if I am actually trying to get better at the game and I had to go to school and my mom was like, turn this off. And then I come home from school and I'm like, okay, I want to pick back up where I was. I have to earn my way all the way back there. And I don't always want to do that. Sometimes I want to just replay from where I left off. And so coupling the invincibility and the level select together, I was like, this is more cheating than I want. Like, because to me, a level select is only cheating if if your mens rea is to cheat. If your mens rea is I'm picking up where I left off, then a level select is not cheating, right? But invincibility is always cheating. Like, it is impossible for me to die is cheating. I can't imagine a situation in which that's, fair play.
Well, and I think, though, to your point, right, is that this is very also, because, I mean, Sonic 1 was the same way, man. Like, you played through that whole thing, and I remember that distinctly, because at one point, I was playing it on, like, the family room screen, and my mom came in and was like, I don't want this. And so I was like, well, I can't turn it off. So we like unplugged the input.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did that.
Yeah.
Every kid our age probably did that.
Yeah. Where it's like, okay, now my game's still running. Yeah.
But you know what? Sonic 1 had a level select that didn't make you invincible. It was up, down, left, right, B, A, start.
Exactly. Right. And so that's the thing is that you're very proud of yourself.
I am because we do video, but this is an audio show.
Yeah.
So the Sonic 1 cheats, because the Sonic 2 cheats you did in the sound select thing where you had to like pick certain numbers in a certain order. But Sonic 1 were button entries. And not only were they button entries, but they were button entries you had to do on rhythm. If you did them too slow or too fast, they didn't work. And that's why they're so deeply ingrained in my head, because everybody knows the Konami code because it's like everywhere, the Konami code. But I'll never forget the 2 for Sonic 1 because the level select is up, down, left, right, B, A, start. And the debug is up, C, down, C, left, C, right, C, hold A, start, because you have to do it on rhythm. So
Right.
even just
So
saying
it's like a
those,
song.
even just saying those words to you right now, I can hear the snare drum comes in, and you had to do it on that rhythm, otherwise it wouldn't work.
Yes. And so, but I think that this is very reminiscent of games of the time where they believed that it kind of had like, I would argue that the games of this era had a more antagonistic relationship with the player than games do now, right? You know, so
hey, thanks for buying our game, but we hate you.
yeah, right. You know, where it was because part of it was what a game developer didn't want was for a kid to, you know, pay $50 for their game and then go to the schoolyard and be like, don't buy that game and beat in 20 minutes, whatever, right? So instead,
it's arcade mindset.
Yeah, exactly, right? So very much so, having a level select was considered cheating, you know? Whereas nowadays we're like, it's my game. I bought it and I don't want to play level 1. I want to play level 5. It's like skipping. It would be like if you bought a CD and they made you listen to the whole thing in order every time, right? Like you couldn't just skip to track 5. It's like, no, you got to earn track 5.
Dude, come over and we'll listen to this album. I'll start it. Let me know when you're driving. I'll start it when you're driving because it's the 4th song that's the real good one. So I'll let it play through.
Yeah, you know, on mute while I do dishes. Yeah, you know. So the games industry has fortunately gotten away from that, but that's definitely something that you see a lot of in old games where it's like, no, you got to earn the right to enjoy this game the way you want to enjoy it. It's like, or I could just enjoy it as a source of entertainment whenever I want because I can do that. So the one other thing that first of all, two other kind of meaty notes. One of them is, so I mentioned the bonus levels are all outside of a 7-Up, right? And that bothered me. And then because I was like, this is dumb, you know? I was like, what? Who cares? You know, like there's no exploration here. There's nothing interesting. And then I thought, man, Sonic does that. And it didn't bother me with Sonic. Why? And here's why. Is because ultimately, when I was playing the bonus levels for Sonic, I wasn't in it for the bonus levels. I was in it for that Chaos Emerald, you know? That's what I want. And so to me, I was always really excited when I got to a bonus level and it was like, do, 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 do. And you're like, yeah, come on, man, let's do
Sonic
this thing.
2, running down the pipe. Boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom,
Do,
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 boom,
do.
boom.
Yeah.
Man, you should just play more Sonic games.
We should play more Sonic games. We haven't played Sonic and Knuckles yet, have we?
When we eventually play that, I feel like we have to do Sonic 3 and Knuckles, right? All like 80 levels with 14 Chaos Emeralds, like the big,
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm tired just thinking about it.
Right.
Yes. And also we should play some like trash Sonic games before that to like, you know.
Sonic 3D Blast.
Yeah. Is that the one?
Oh, God. It ruined my birthday when I was a kid.
Nice. Excellent. It didn't ruin your childhood retroactively. It's not like you're an adult. You know, it ruined my childhood. No, while I was still a child, it ruined my childhood.
Yep. 12th birthday. Terrible.
So anyway, so that was kind of my justification for that, which is that, you know, in Sonic, even though the bonus levels were very repetitive and basically kind of followed the same formula as this, ultimately the reward was more meaningful because it altered the way you could play the main game. This game is devoid of that, which therefore made the bonus levels, to me, trite. The other thing I just want to mention is game overs kick you back to the main screen, and I've made my opinions about that known. I don't care for it. It is a emotional gut punch to, you know, be playing a game and then all of a sudden for them to be like, no, we're not even going to start you off at the beginning of level 1. You got to sit through the title screen. It's like, oh man, I might as well just turn this thing off.
I feel like if you're going to make somebody sit through the title screen, you need like a cool game over screen, right? Like Sonic games had cool game over screens, right? Where Sonic kind of looks at you like he's just so disappointed, right? In some of the games, Eggman is kind of doing his like, he's got the emeralds and he's laughing at you because he's like, haha, I've got the Chaos Emeralds, right? Like you got to do some sort of like commiserating kind of thing, right? Just like, hey man, I get it. You died. You don't have any continues left. It sucks. And then because then you've had a chance to like emotionally fortify yourself, and then you press start, and then it kicks you back to the title screen. It's like, okay, let's do this again, right? But just like, oh, I took my last hit point of damage, and then I'm seeing cool spot on the surfing, like, and it's like starter options, and it's like, whoa, what? I was just in Sid's bedroom getting attacked by toys. What the hell happened?
When I think that, to me, Celeste will always be the exemplar of cycle time, but to me, the exemplar of this era, Castlevania, man, because Castlevania, like, they had the checkpoints, and then when you ran out of all your lives, it just kicked you back to the beginning of the level, which is in line with what your assessment, which I agree with, which is that they're basically kind of saying, no, practice more, so like you get to checkpoint 1 and then checkpoint 2 and you die. And it's like, okay, so clearly you're not ready for the boss. Not only that, you should probably go back and brush up a little bit more on what this level offers, right? But when the levels and enemies are wildly varied or anything like that, like you just are like, man, I beat the sand level. I don't want to sit here and slog through it again, and then maybe because I'm not paying attention, make a few mistakes, and then go into toy level more depowered than I was originally. So it just, I don't know. I don't like it. Never liked it. Never will like it.
Yeah, if you couldn't tolerate it as a kid, your patience for that is going in the other direction, not
way down.
Going down, not up.
Yeah, this is definitely the wet shoes for me. Like, I have no tolerance for it. Never have. Burn it all down.
So I've one last mechanical note I wanted to mention. I forgot to say in the visuals that they ask you to make way too many leaps of faith, where they're just like, hey, jump over there. Maybe there's a platform over there. And sometimes there's visual indicators, but often it's just, I'm going to just jump as far as I can and assume there's going to be something there. And there always is, but I don't personally like that because it just seems like lazy and kind of stupid level design. The thing I want to talk about mechanically, just real quick, is your jump is too mighty for the amount of interior spaces you are in. Because when you're on the beach and when you're out like on the pier, you jump and you have this crazy high jump, and it's like, okay, great. Like I'm flying through the air. Like I just don't care. But a lot of the levels are in these small, tight, confined interior vertical spaces where you have to like climb up and down and platform up and down. And the amount of times I was just smashing my cool head into the ceiling, which completely wrecks your jump trajectory and robs you of all of your momentum. And then I would fall into an enemy, fall into a pit, fall into an environmental hazard. And I was just like, it is. I have no way to tell Cool Spot, please don't jump as high as you can, right? Like you can do like the hair trigger press and get like a small jump, or you can basically get a full jump, but like a medium jump is really hard to get out of him. And just the way the levels are designed, I was like, make the levels bigger or make the jump smaller. Like these, it feels like whoever decided how big his jump should be and whoever decided like how, tall a lot of the vertical spaces would be, like they didn't talk.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of the Velociraptor in Jurassic Park.
Yes. Right? It felt just like that.
Yeah. So when you say that Cool Spot jumps like a Velociraptor, that's probably not what you're going for, right?
No, that is not the game feel that I think the executives at 7-Up requested.
Yeah. Although I could imagine like some exec playing Jurassic Park and like playing as a Velociraptor, and they said, "Never have I felt cooler. Put it in there, make it like that." And for the devs to be like, "Well, that's kind of a different game from a different like source media. I don't really know." It makes me think of The Simpsons when they're developing Poochie, and
Rostify him up about 10%.
Well, that, but also the when they're in the boardroom and they have the writers and like the execs, and all of the writers are very like focused on the medium, and all the execs are like, "Shut up, you nerds from Harvard." So it just makes me think of the we're talking about the original dog from hell. You mean Cerberus? So yeah, I can imagine that meeting happening, but with the Velociraptor jump. So. I don't know, man. What are you feeling?
Do I think this held up? Is that the question you're asking me?
Yeah.
No, but but it was never going to, because this game wasn't good to begin with, right? So really, the question we're asking is not, is this game as good as you remember. We're asking the far more specific, if you enjoyed playing this as a kid, could you still enjoy playing it now? Also no. Like, it's a clunky, awkward, stylistically confusing mess. Like, the correct way to play this game is to just buy a 2-liter of 7-Up and drink it while listening to the soundtrack on YouTube. Like, that, if you want to play Cool Spot, that would be my recommendation for how to get this game into you. Like, drink a 7-Up while listening to the shockingly good soundtrack, because it's just, the challenge is, you're fighting the game, right? So it's not like, oh, I overcame this challenge. It's like, the game allowed me to be successful. And that's just not super fun. And because I played with the level select a little bit, because 90s cheats are fun. Having the invincibility forced on means there were times where I was going through portions of some of the later levels where I was like, I can't imagine caring enough to get good enough to do this. Like, I'm taking just non-stop damage, which means I would be dying left and right, and then game over and all the way back to the beginning. And I was just like, it's not a good sign when your game isn't fun when you're God, right? Like, playing Sonic the Hedgehog when you're supersonic and you're invincible and you just fly through enemies, super satisfying. 1, because it doesn't last forever, and 2, because you got to earn it. But this, just saying like, oh, hey, you want to go practice the 5th level? Well, you can't practice it because you're invincible. It's like, come on, guys. Like, I'm trying to play your game. Like, let me just play your game. Why are you doing this? Why are you like this?
And I remember with Supersonic, even when I didn't earn it and I cheated to get it, it was still satisfying because the game itself was like rewarding and challenging. So the game had a strict set of rules that it abided by, and you could overcome them, right? But then it was just fun occasionally to be like, but I don't need to. I'm God. I am Super Saiyan Vegeta.
Yep.
Because if you look at those animations side by side, it's the same. Half-Life 3 confirmed.
So for me, full nostalgia goggles required is my answer, in case anybody was confused.
Yeah. It was, to me, so evident, I forgot that you didn't actually say it out loud. Yeah, so also full nostalgia goggles required. I mean, so to me, a lot of the times what it comes down to is, what does this game offer? You know, like, so, because if we're playing a game, and even, you know, with Jekyll and Hyde, right, full nostalgia goggles, but what does it offer? It offers a great exemplar of what not to do, you know? And sometimes sometimes your entire point of life is to serve as a cautionary tale for others, right? You know, so sometimes it's like, play this, it does these, or, try this game, it does this interesting mechanic. It's not great, but if you're interested in like how this would play out in a game, play this. The only novel thing that this game does is advertising. That's the only thing that makes this game special, right? So to me, the best way to get this game into you is to watch a 7-Up commercial from the 90s, because that's basically all. Play Sonic and watch it, and watch a game from the, like watch that commercial, right? When you said just kick back and drink 7-Up and listen to the soundtrack, I agree with that, with one caveat of like, get an X-Acto knife and cut out the cool spot and then jump around, go like, ooh, oh, like.
Yeah, like throwing the 7-Up around the room.
Yeah, but I think if you make yourself a little action figure, which if you want to do on the cheap, you could just cut out the 7-Up spot. That's the way to go. So, I mean, is there a spot on a list somewhere for this? Probably. It's not cool.
The curtain falls. The music plays. The credits roll. Then it all fades to black. And you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. save the day.